I found out my parents had ruined my credit before I even turned 18 when a bank manager politely informed me that I already had more than $80,000 in revolving debt in my name, and my mother looked me dead in the eye, smiled at him and said, "Oh honey, that must be a mistake," while squeezing my knee under the desk hard enough to leave bruises. I was 25, sitting in a little glass office at our local bank, clutching a folder full of pay stubs and rental history, because my husband and I were finally ready to buy a tiny starter home after years of crappy apartments and moldy bathrooms. We'd done everything right, or so I thought. We'd saved, we'd watched our credit scores like hawks, we'd followed all the financial advice blogs. The loan officer had been so cheerful when he let us back, complimenting us on our young couple with a dream vibe. Then he pulled my credit report, his eyebrows climbed higher and higher, and the air in the room changed. "So," he said carefully, like someone trying not to spook a wild animal, "there seem to be a few things on here we should talk about." I laughed because that's what you do when you're sure there's just a silly mix-up. "That has to be a mistake," I said. "I have one credit card with a $1,500 limit, and I pay it off every month. I have a car loan that I've never been late on. That's it." He turned the monitor slightly toward me. "According to the report," he said, "you have 5 open credit cards, all near or at their limits, and a personal loan that went into collections 3 years ago." My stomach dropped straight through the cheap carpet. On the screen were account names I'd never seen before, store cards I'd never applied for, a Platinum Visa I absolutely did not own. All opened when I was between 18 and 22, all with my full name, my social security number, and my parents' address, the little house on Maple Street where I'd grown up. This isn't mine," I said, my voice sounding too loud in the small room. "I've never had a Kohl's card or a Home Plus card. I've never taken out a personal loan." The loan officer gave me a sympathetic smile I hated instantly. "Identity theft is, unfortunately, very common," he said. "Sometimes it's a clerical error, sometimes it's fraud. You'll want to contact the bureaus, file disputes, maybe a police report. But I'm afraid we can't move forward with the mortgage at this time." I remember staring at my own name on the screen, the numbers next to it, the bright red delinquent and charged OFF labels, and feeling like I was looking at a parallel universe version of myself. I'd always thought of myself as the responsible one, the steady one, the boring one in a good way. I paid my bills. I clipped coupons. I brought my lunch to work in reused yogurt containers. The idea that my name was connected to tens of thousands of dollars in unpaid debt felt like finding out there was a wanted poster with my face on it in another state. When the meeting was clearly over, when the loan officer had gently suggested we could revisit in a couple of years if I got things cleaned up, I mumbled something about needing to use the restroom and fled. I locked myself in a stall, sat on the closed toilet lid, and tried not to throw up. My husband, Ethan, knocked softly after a few minutes. "Meg," he said, "you okay?" "No," I said, because there was no point lying. Apparently I've been living a double life as a shopaholic deadbeat. This is where my mother comes in, because I hadn't invited her to this appointment. I want to be very clear about that. My parents just had a habit of inserting themselves into every big decision I made, the way ivy inserts itself into a wall. First, it's a little clingy, kind of pretty. 20 years later, it's holding the whole structure together and quietly cracking the brick. My mother insisted on coming to the bank for support. "Buying a home is such a big step," she'd said the night before, when I mentioned our appointment. "Your father and I will meet you there. We know the manager. He used to play on your dad's softball team. It never hurts to have a familiar face in the room." I tried to gently say that Ethan and I could handle it on our own, but she did that wounded bird thing she does, where her eyes get shiny and she says, "I just want to be involved in your life, honey. You'll understand when Ruby is older." Ruby is my niece, my brother's daughter, the sun around which my parents orbit. Saying no in our family has always been harder than going along. So she and my dad sat in the lobby while Ethan and I went back with the loan officer. When we came out red-eyed and shell-shocked, they both stood up, alarmed. "Well," my dad asked. How much did you qualify for? We didn't, I said, the word sticking in my throat. Apparently my credit is a dumpster fire. My mother frowned. That doesn't make sense, she said. You've always been so careful. Ethan, bless him, started to explain what the loan officer had said about the cards and the loan and the late payments. My mother's face went through about 6 expressions in 3 seconds. Confusion, surprise, something like fear, then a strange calm. There must be some mistake, she said. Let's go talk to them. Maybe they mixed you up with someone else. Before I could protest, she'd marched back to the front desk and asked, with her warmest church lady smile, if we could clarify something about my report. Which is how, 10 minutes later, I found myself back in that little glass office, this time with my mother sitting beside me, her hand on my knee under the desk, squeezing once every time the loan officer said something she didn't like. As I explained to your daughter, he said, looking a little harried now, these accounts have been open for several years. The social security number, date of birth, and address match. We can show you the report, but if you believe this is identity theft, the next step is to contact the credit bureaus and file a police report. Could we see the report? My mother asked sweetly. He printed it. The paper was warm when he slid it across the desk. My mother scanned it quickly, her eyes darting. I watched her face, not the paper. I saw the exact moment recognition flickered there. It was tiny. If I hadn't been looking for it, I might have missed it. A little tightening around her mouth, a flicker in her eyes. Then she smoothed it back into concern. Oh my goodness, she said, pressing a manicured hand to her chest. This is awful. Who would do such a thing to our daughter? Her grip on my knee tightened, digging into the muscle. I realized she wasn't holding my hand to comfort me. She was signaling me. Shut up. Don't say anything. Turn your brain off like you always do when we're talking to authority figures. We'll handle it, she said to the loan officer. We'll look into it and get it straightened out. Thank you so much for your time. In the car Ethan drove white-knuckled. I sat in the passenger seat, staring at the report, while my mother perched in the back like a vulture. My dad had gone back to work, muttering about banks and their games. This doesn't make sense, I said finally. These accounts were opened when I was 18. I was living at home. I didn't even know my own social security number back then. You kept it locked up. Identity thieves can get all kinds of information, my mother said briskly. It's scary. Have you used your card online? That's how they get you. Online for $80,000 worth of stuff? Ethan said, unable to help himself. In our tiny town? All shipped to her parents' address. My mother bristled. Are you suggesting we had anything to do with this? She demanded. Because that is a disgusting thing to imply, Ethan. After everything we've done to help you too. He opened his mouth, then shut it. I could almost see the calculus on his face. Fight her and make this worse, or back off and deal with me later. He chose me, which is one of the many reasons I married him. We're just trying to understand, I said more calmly. I'm not accusing anyone. I need to know what happened. What happened? My mother said, voice going icy in that way that told me I'd hit the invisible fence. Is that someone stole your identity, and instead of being grateful you have parents who know how to deal with this, you're already turning on us. We'll figure it out. We always do. You don't need to get hysterical. Hysterical. That was a word she reserved for when any emotion of mine became inconvenient. Anger, fear, tears. All of it fell under hysterical. You'd think, given that she was always on about supporting other women, she'd know better than to use a word that's been weaponized against women for centuries. But my mother's feminism extended exactly as far as it didn't interfere with her control. When we got home that night, Ethan took my hands in our tiny kitchen and said, Meg, we need to pull your credit reports from all 3 bureaus. All of them. And we need to do it somewhere your mom can't see over your shoulder. You think she? I started, but the words wouldn't form. I think those accounts use your parents' address, he said carefully. I think your mom's face did something weird when she saw that report. I think it's at least worth considering the possibility. I wanted to reject that outright. My parents were a lot of things: overbearing, controlling, judgmental, but criminals? The people who made me return a candy bar I accidentally walked out of a store with when I was 9 because we do not steal in this family? The people who tithed 10% of every paycheck, no matter what? The people who believed God was always watching. Identity theft just didn't fit. Then again, a lot of things in my family hadn't fit once I started looking closely. The borrowing of my birthday money for emergencies that never seemed to get paid back. The time my mom asked to hold on to my first paycheck from my high school job so you don't blow it, and then got offended when I asked for it for prom. The years of "we'll pay you back" that somehow never materialized. The constant message that in this family we share everything, which always seemed to mean I shared and they took. Ethan and I drove to his brother's house the next day under the pretense of visiting our niece. While she showed me her new glitter markers, Ethan set up his laptop at the dining table and walked me through pulling my reports. There they were again in black and white. The same cards, the same loan. All opened in those years when I was just out of high school, still living at home, still handing my mail to my mother because grown-up stuff made me anxious. The addresses on the accounts were all my parents' house. Some of the cards had been used at stores in our town. Gas stations along the highway my dad used for his HVAC calls. A furniture store where my parents had bought a new sectional the year my brother, Dylan, and his girlfriend moved back in temporarily. Do you recognize any of this? Ethan asked quietly. There was a Home Plus card with several large purchases around the time my parents redid their kitchen. A medical bill from a hospital an hour away, dated the same month my dad had a minor heart procedure. A series of charges at a law office, right around when Dylan got his second DUI and somehow avoided jail time. My head started to pound. I think, I said slowly, I'm going to be sick. You don't have to decide anything right now, Ethan said. But we need documentation. We need to call the fraud departments. We need to file disputes. If this is fraud, I said. If, he repeated, like he wanted to respect my need to move slowly, even though we both knew where the trail was pointing. Filing the disputes meant answering uncomfortable questions. Had I authorized these accounts? Had I ever given anyone permission to use my social security number? Who had access to my personal information? My parents, I had to say over and over. My parents had the file with all my documents. My parents kept my social security card. My parents made me sign blank forms for college stuff when I was 17. Each time I said it, the loan officer's sympathetic look ran laps in my head. Sometimes it's family, he'd murmured. It's more common than people think. I didn't confront my parents right away. I wanted to tell myself there was another explanation, a clerical error. A wild coincidence. A glitch in the matrix. Instead, there were little things that once I knew to look started leaping out at me. My mother's purse, always stuffed with mail that had my name on it. Oh, I grabbed this from your old room, she'd say. You know how you are with bills, honey. You let things slide. I'd never lived in my old room as an adult. I'd gone straight from their house to a dorm, then to an apartment with Ethan. Any mail still going to my parents' address was there because she'd never changed it. Once, when I dropped by unannounced on my lunch break, I saw her at the kitchen table with a stack of credit card statements. She shoved them into a folder when I walked in. Just bills, she said lightly. Boring stuff. Anything I should know about? I asked half joking. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Why would there be? She said. My dad's attitude was no help. He'd always been under the impression that credit was a conspiracy invented by the man, but he had no problem using it when it suited him. Everyone's in debt, he'd say when the subject came up. It's how America works. We're not going to live like that, I told Ethan when we first moved in together. We're going to do it right. No big balances. No surprises. The irony was not lost on me. The breaking point came when I went to my parents' house alone, under the pretense of helping my mom clean out the hall closet. She'd been complaining about it for months. Too much junk, she'd say. I can't find anything. I offered to help because that's what I do. I show up. I organize. I fix what I can. While she fussed over some coats, I opened one of the plastic bins on the top shelf, looking for a place to stash old board games. Instead, I found a stack of envelopes, rubber banded together, all addressed to me, all unopened. My heart pounded as I slid the rubber band off. Inside were credit card statements, late notices, final warning before charge-off, all for accounts I'd never known existed, all sent to this address, all with balances in the thousands. On the bottom of the stack was a letter from a collection agency, threatening legal action. What are you doing? My mother's voice cut through the hallway, sharper than I'd heard it in a long time. I turned slowly. She was pale, her hands gripping the doorframe. For once, she didn't even pretend to smile. What is this? I asked, holding up the bundle. Why is my mail here? We meant to tell you, she said quickly, then winced like even she knew how bad that sounded. Tell me what? I said. That you opened credit cards in my name? That you let them go to collections? That you hid the mail? Lower your voice, she hissed. Do you want the neighbors to hear? It's not what you think. Then what is it? I demanded. Because from where I'm standing, it looks a lot like you stole my identity. She flinched like I'd slapped her. We're your parents, she said, as if that explained everything. We didn't steal anything. We used resources that were available to the family. My credit is not a resource, I said. My social is not a resource. It's my life. She started crying big dramatic tears. You have no idea what we've been through, she said. Your father's hospital bills, the roof, Dylan's mess. We did what we had to do. So you opened cards in my name, I said. Without asking, without telling me. You signed my name on a loan. She didn't deny it. The bank man said you'd get a better rate, she said. You had no credit, so it was easy. We thought we'd pay it off before it mattered. Then things snowballed. How long have you been planning to tell me? I asked, my voice dangerously calm. Before or after we got denied for a house? What was I supposed to do? She sobbed. Watch your father die because we couldn't afford his surgery? Let your brother go to jail? Let the house fall apart? You think the church would have helped us? They have their own problems. You could have asked me, I said. You could have said, Meg, we're in trouble. Can we use your name to get a loan? I probably would have said yes. I wouldn't be happy, but I would have known. You were a child, she said. You would have said no because you don't understand how family works. We didn't want to put that burden on you. There it was. The twisted logic at the heart of everything. Protect the image. Hide the truth. Make unilateral decisions for your own good. Then blame you for not being grateful. You put the burden on me anyway, I said. You just did it behind my back. My father came home in the middle of this, sweaty from a job, tool belt still on. He took one look at us, me shaking, my mother crying, and sighed. What now? He muttered. She knows, my mother said, wiping her eyes. About the cards. About the loan. He dropped his tool belt with a thud. Well, that's great, he said. Just great. Guess the cat's out of the bag. The cat. I repeated, incredulous. The cat is $80,000 of debt in my name. You're exaggerating, he said. It's not that much. The bank said. The bank doesn't know everything, he cut in. Half of that is fees, interest, junk. They inflate the numbers to scare you. He waved a hand dismissively. It's just money. It's my credit, I said. It's my ability to buy a house, to get a car loan, to live. You have a roof over your head, he shot back. You have a car. You have a job. You think we had any of that at your age? We didn't have parents who took on debt for us. You didn't have parents who committed felonies for you, I said. The word hung there, heavier than anything else I'd said. Felonies. My mother gasped. Don't say that, she whispered. We're not criminals. You opened accounts in someone else's name, I said. You signed my signature. You hid the bills. That's identity theft. That's fraud. We're your parents, my father repeated, as if that was some kind of magic immunity charm. You owe us everything. The roof over your head. Those braces on your teeth. Your college. My federal loans paid for college, I said. And the rest I paid off myself. Because we co-signed, he said. Don't you forget that. You used my social, I said. You didn't co-sign. You were the ones writing on my name. We shouted ourselves hoarse. At some point, my mother resorted to her nuclear option. If you go to the police, she said, her voice low and shaking, they will arrest us. Do you understand that? They will drag your parents away in handcuffs like animals. Your father could go to prison. At his age. Do you want that on your conscience? The thought made me physically ill. I pictured my dad in an orange jumpsuit, my mom crying on a courtroom bench. I also pictured myself at 60, still renting, still paying double interest because of poor credit history, still unable to put my own kids through school because I was cleaning up a mess I hadn't made. I don't want any of this, I said, tears streaming down my face. I just wanted to buy a house. And we just wanted to keep this family afloat, my mother said. Sometimes grown-ups have to make hard choices. Someday you'll understand. I'm already a grown-up, I said. That's the problem. Ethan and I left. In the car, I sobbed so hard he had to pull over. I can't send my parents to jail, I choked. I can't. You might not have a choice, he said softly. If you want to clear your name, the credit bureaus are going to ask for a police report. The banks are going to want proof. Otherwise, they'll say you were in on it. I don't want to blow up my family, I whispered. Newsflash, he said gently. They already lit the fuse. You're just deciding if you're going to stand on it. In the end, the decision got made for me in a boring bureaucratic way. I filed disputes with the credit bureaus. They sent me form letters asking for documents. I sent what I had. A copy of my driver's license, my actual credit history, a statement that I had not opened those accounts. They responded with more letters. To proceed, one of them said, we require a copy of a police report related to identity theft. I stared at that sentence for a long time. I thought about ignoring it, letting it sit in a drawer. Maybe the debt would fall off in 7 years. Maybe we could rent forever. Maybe my parents would die before the next crisis. Then I thought about my hypothetical children. I imagined sitting across from them in a bank office someday, explaining why they couldn't get a loan because their grandparents had torched our finances and we just let it go. I can't let this keep rippling forward, I told Ethan. We have to stop it somewhere. Filing the police report was one of the most surreal experiences of my life. I sat in a small beige room at the station while a bored-looking officer took notes. So your parents opened credit cards in your name without your permission, he summarized. Yes, I said. They admitted it. Do you have that admission in writing? He asked. No, I said. It was a fight. At their house. He sighed. We'll still file the report, he said. Just so you have it. But if the banks want to press charges, that'll be between them and the DA. Do you think they will? I asked, my voice small. He shrugged. Depends, he said. Sometimes they go hard on this stuff, make an example. Sometimes they write it off. You should be prepared for either. I walked out of the station feeling like I'd stepped into an alternate universe where I was the kind of person who reported her own parents to the police. My mother found out 2 days later, when an officer called to follow up. She showed up at my apartment that night, eyes swollen, mascara smeared. How could you? She demanded, shoving past Ethan into the living room. How could you do this to us? I had to file a report to clear my credit, I said, heart pounding. It was the only way. No one was going to know, she sobbed. We were going to fix it quietly. Now the whole town will know our daughter thinks we're criminals. I don't think, I said. I know what you did. So do you. We did it for you, she said. For this family. For Dylan. For your father's health. We sacrificed everything, and this is how you repay us. You've always been ungrateful, but this? You sacrificed my future without asking, I said. That's not love. That's theft. Your father might go to prison, she cried. He's not well. This could kill him. He should have thought about that before he signed my name, I said. I didn't make that choice. He did. Dylan, of course, called me the next day. What the hell is wrong with you? He demanded. Mom says you're trying to put them in jail. I'm trying to fix my credit, I said. They used my name to clean up your DUIs, by the way, so maybe save some of that outrage for yourself. I didn't ask them to, he said. I told them not to. But family steps up. That's what we do. Or what we did, until you decided you were too good for us. I'm not too good for you, I said. I just don't think I should be an ATM for other people's bad decisions. You think you're better than us because you married some guy with a 401k, he sneered. You forgot where you came from. The investigation crawled along at the speed of government. Months passed. We renewed our lease. We saved more. I got a second job tutoring on weekends. Ethan picked up overtime. My credit report slowly started to show some of the disputed accounts as under investigation instead of seriously delinquent. Meanwhile, my parents' side of the family split into camps. Half of them thought my parents were saints who'd only done what they had to do to survive, and that I was a heartless brat for involving the law. The other half, the quieter half, pulled me aside at gatherings and said things like, "Your mom used my credit card once without asking." I never had the courage to say anything. She opened a store card in my name because she forgot hers, one aunt confessed. I paid it off to keep the peace. Don't let them guilt you into that. Eventually, the DA decided to pursue a plea deal. My parents were offered the chance to avoid jail time if they admitted to fraud, paid restitution, and agreed to financial counseling. My father raged about it. I'm not admitting to something I didn't do, he said. We're not criminals. You literally did the thing, I said. That's the definition of what you did. We did it for family, he snapped. The law doesn't care about that, I said. The bank doesn't care about that. My credit sure as hell doesn't care about that. They took the deal. Partly because their lawyer told them they'd almost certainly lose at trial, partly because the local paper had started sniffing around, and my mother couldn't stand the thought of her mugshot online. They paid back a portion of the debt, bit by bit, through a court-ordered plan. The rest, the banks wrote off as uncollectible once the fraud designation went through. On my credit reports, those accounts slowly shifted from charge-off to fraud, consumer not liable. My score crept upward, like a shy animal inching back toward a yard it had once called home. My parents, however, never forgave me. You humiliated us, my mother said over and over. You dragged our name through the mud. You made sure everyone knows, my father added. Our own daughter. You made sure my name was attached to $80,000 of bad debt, I said. I guess we all did something. We went low contact after that. Enough to keep the threads of family technically intact. Obligatory holiday visits, occasional phone calls, but nothing like before. When we did go over for Christmas or Thanksgiving, there were barbs tucked into every conversation. Must be nice to afford gifts like that, my mother would say smugly when I gave my niece a book set. Some people didn't have their credit handed to them on a silver platter. Some people didn't grow up thinking they were better than everyone else. My father would mutter when Ethan talked about our retirement savings. Some people remember who raised them. When our daughter, Lily, was born 3 years later, my mother immediately tried to wedge herself back in. You'll need help, she said. You don't know what you're doing. I remembered the bank office, the knee squeeze, the storage bin full of my stolen mail. We're okay, I said. We've got it. I let them be grandparents in small doses, supervised like you would with a toddler and a box of matches. I never let them babysit alone, not because I thought they'd physically hurt my child, but because I didn't trust them not to start weaving her into their web of family obligations before she could walk. She'll thank us someday, my mother would say, bouncing Lily on her knee. She'll know who was there from the beginning. When Lily turned 5 and we finally closed on a small house, not the one we dreamed of at 25, but a nice little place in a less trendy neighborhood, my mother acted like we'd stabbed her. So you did it without us, she said when I announced it. Without our help. Your help is why it took 10 years, Ethan said under his breath. My father refused to come see it. I'm not stepping foot in that place, he said. You chose them over us. Them meaning the bank, the DA, the system, anyone but himself. My parents came around a little when my dad's health started to fail. Heart disease, diabetes, all the greatest hits of a man who treated vegetables like a suggestion. They needed rides, help with paperwork, someone to advocate at appointments. You're so good with forms, my mother said on the phone one night, voice sugar sweet. You always were. Maybe you could come over and help with some things. I'm not signing anything, I said. She laughed too loudly. Oh honey, no, she said. Nothing like that. Just insurance stuff. Medicare. Boring. I went. Of course I did. Because I'm still me, and they're still my parents, and there's a part of me that will always show up when someone I love is in trouble. But I read every line. I refuse to let them rush me. When my mother tried to slide a stack of papers under my hand with a pen, I gently pushed them back. You sign, I said. I'll witness. You don't trust us, she said, eyes narrowing. You made that bed, I said. I'm just sleeping on the edge of it. My father died last year in a hospital bed, tubes everywhere. In his last lucid moment, he grabbed my wrist and said, You'll take care of your mother, right? She needs you. I thought about everything he'd done, everything he'd said. I thought about the line between obligation and self-destruction. I'll make sure she's safe, I said. It was the closest thing to a promise I could give. My mother calls often. Sometimes it's practical. A bill she doesn't understand, a prescription mix-up. Sometimes it's purely emotional. I'm so alone, she'll say. Your brother doesn't come around much. After what happened with his loans, he's bitter. He's bitter at you, I think, but don't say. He's bitter at everyone, she continues. At the system. At you. I know, I say. He made that clear. We did our best, she'll say, as if that erases intent. We always did our best for you kids. Maybe they did. Maybe their best was warped by fear and pride and bad examples. Maybe they truly believed that because they were family, the normal rules didn't apply. That using my name was just another way of sharing. That as long as they meant well, they weren't really doing anything wrong. I don't know. I only know how it felt to sit in that bank office and realize my parents had been living entire financial lives in my skin. I know how it felt to choose between protecting them and protecting my future. I know how it feels even now when I get a letter from a credit bureau and my heart jumps, certain it's bad news even when it's just a statement. I watch Lily learning about money now. We give her an allowance. We show her how to save. We talk about credit in age-appropriate ways. Your name is important, I tell her. You have to protect it. Sometimes I catch my mother watching us with a strange look on her face. Regret, maybe. Resentment, definitely. You're raising her to be selfish, she said once. We didn't raise you that way. You raised me to give until I broke, I said. I'm trying something different. So that's where I'm at, internet strangers. I'm a 35-year-old woman whose parents secretly opened credit cards and a personal loan in her name when she was barely legal, racked up more than $80,000 in debt bailing out my dad's health and my brother's mistakes, hid the mail, lied about it for years, and then called me ungrateful and cruel when I filed a police report to clear my credit and have the accounts marked as fraud. They took a plea deal, avoided jail, paid some restitution, and still tell anyone who will listen that our daughter ruined us over a few pieces of plastic. I have a house now, a family, and a mostly clean credit report, but my relationship with my parents is permanently cracked, and part of me still feels like the bad guy for turning my own mom and dad into case numbers. If you were in my shoes, sitting in that bank, finding out your parents had been using your name and social for years, knowing that the only way to truly fix it was to treat them like any other identity thieves and involve the police, would you have swallowed the debt, spent a decade paying off money you didn't spend to keep the peace and honor your father and mother? Or would you have done what I did and reported them, even knowing it would blow up your family and earn you a lifetime label as the ungrateful kid who chose her credit score over her parents?